Chatelet brothers and sisters, my name is Paul Marker, and at 53 I have finally decided, and technology allows, me to share my opinions, and they are, I promise, unique opinions. Why does this video title start with Canada, Land of Death? Well, it is a provocative title, but I mean it. I live in a country that ranks 6th in global happiness, but I live in a death camp where people are exterminated. How are people exterminated in this death camp I call Canada? Consider that your great-grandmother had 12 children, your grandmother 5, your mom 1 or 2, and most millennials of childbearing age have 1 or none. Consider the position of an immigrant from a third world country who comes to Canada for economic opportunity. I won't call it a better life for a specific reason. If this immigrant does what most do and conforms to Canadian cultural norms over his life, within a few generations that immigrant will have either no descendants, or the few descendants they will have succumbed to the Western afflictions of drug addiction, obesity, mental illness, or gender confusion. If this immigrant had stayed in his third world country, he would have died surrounded by numerous children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. In Canada, he dies alone, and in the knowledge his bloodline will run out. This may be a unique way of saying this, but this immigrant was just sacrificed on the altar of global capitalism. We are all being sacrificed on the altar of global capitalism, and we must do something about it. If global capitalism has brought about the conditions whereby the majority of the population's bloodlines die out, and a constant stream of immigration is necessary to replace the people who die out, I'm sorry to tell you, but you live in a place that consumes humans. You live in a death camp. You live in Canada, land of death. This death camp may have gyms, saunas, spas, and nail salons, but these are just rainbows painted on your society to distract you until it is too late. If you can see the evil that is being done to us, you might be interested in following my channel. Okay, to lighten up a bit. A little background on me politically. I was a precocious child and was a communist at 11. I guess when you have nothing, the idea of people having to share with you is appealing. I must have been annoying. In my research into communism, I read about the Israeli kibbutzes and how they tried to implement communism. I came across a passage where the kibbutzim had tried to erase gender roles and insisted the boys and girls shower together. This showering together worked until the girls hit puberty, and then no amount of Marxist persuasion could force the girls into the shower with the boys. I looked into communism more and realized that it was not just about economic equity, erasing class differences, but it sought to erase differences of gender and race also. Somehow we were expected to become some sort of genderless unirace people or some such nonsense, and when we were all a genderless unirace, there would somehow magically be no more conflict, and we'd all live in peace and prosperity. Even at 11 I could tell how stupid that sounded, and I became a fervent anti-communist. Now this leads me to the 2 reasons I will give you that I have chosen this time to finally speak out. I don't know if you are familiar with Jordan Peterson, a University of Toronto professor who is protesting a draconian speech law that erases gender. Please research this yourself and you will see he's willing to go to jail and go on a hunger strike rather than submit to the legal notion gender doesn't exist. We seem to be at the point in our society where the Israeli kibbutzes failed. The Marxists in charge are trying to get the girls to shower with the boys again. It shows how out of touch and dare I say occupational our government is here in Ontario and around the Western world. The people want none of this. This is my first reason for making this video. Jordan Peterson inspired me. I'll share a cell with that man anytime. The second reason I'm making this video is a political development in Canada. Motion M103 seems to be leading to the criminalization of the criticism of Islam. Since I think Sharia law is worse than slavery, it's slavery plus they cut your clitoris off. Any law that criminalizes criticism of Islam is one I'll be proud to break. So follow this channel and you see a man put himself in jail for the cause of freedom. As you watch me martyr myself for freedom, I'll be espousing my political beliefs. I am a national actuarialist, a NACAC for short. I believe in nationalism, Canada and Ontario first, and I believe the proper role of society is sharing risks through actuarial means with social insurance programs. I believe in public health insurance like we have in Ontario, but 2-tier. I believe in public prescription drug coverage, dental coverage, eyeglasses, everything, The province should be in the business of healthcare and administer public insurance programs. Another great example of actuarialism working is the Canada Pension Plan. When people are put into a defined benefit pension plan, they are put into an actuarial pool, where risks and rewards are shared. Saving for retirement in a defined benefit pension plan takes 1/3 of the money it would take for the same level of retirement income as saving outside a plan would. Of course, there's nothing left to inherit. I would give Canadians a chance to save extra into the Canada Pension Plan in ideas I will explore in later videos. For the rest of society, the motto of a national actuarialist is radical freedom. Most of the government and rules not devoted to healthcare, courts, police, or education will be eliminated. Now I'm going to introduce you to the 5 big lies. The lies it is heresy to challenge. The lies that define the matrix of exploitation that entraps us. These lies are enforced by treating everyone who disagrees with them as a blasphemer, someone not allowed in polite society, someone it is okay to marginalize. I will explain how these lies exploit us later. The 5 heretical lies of the postmodern age are: 1. The sexes are equal. 2. The races are equal. 3. Man-made carbon dioxide is an imminent threat. 4. Diversity is strength. And 5. Islam is a religion of peace. Now I will address lies 1 and 2 together. The big lies we're all required to play act are true, so we don't get rejected like a mismatched kidney by the society we live in. Now I call myself a race and sex realist, and you should too. All it takes to be a race and sex realist is an internet connection, a Google homepage, and half an hour of curiosity. You can search for race and sex and IQ, race and sex and income, race and sex and crime rates, race and sex and workplace death rates, and as soon as it becomes obvious that we live in charts and graphs and statistics that the races and sexes live dramatically different lives. Yet if we acknowledge what we find on Google publicly, we are not racist Nazi haters, according to all the globalists in power and in the know. Let me give you a little aside on white men run almost everything and are most of the world's hyper-successful people. White men have a very flat and broad IQ distribution. 3% of white men have IQs over 140. And because of the unique nature of the broad, flat white men's IQ distribution, almost no other race, except for Ashkenazi Jews, regularly produces hyper-intelligent men such as white men do. If you look at the significant events and significant people in human history, 97.5 of them were white men or Ashkenazis. Human progress is enacted almost exclusively by white men with IQs of 140 and above. Without white men, there would be no progress. An example of this would be little old Canada with 38 million people has won more Nobel Prizes than China, a country of over 1 billion. This is because although the Chinese IQ distribution averages higher than white people's, it is a very narrow distribution. IQs over 140 are very rare in China. And since history is made by hyper-intelligent, not much of anything resembling progress has gone on in China despite 5,000 years of civilization. So there you have white supremacy explained. The ice wizards are just simply diabolically smart. But back to race and sex realism. It is obvious to everyone that women seem more interested in people and men are more interested in things. But try to accommodate this is heresy. If you're not in favor of doing all we can to increase women in STEM, you're a sexist bigot. People devote their entire lives to finding and closing the gaps in society. What you have to keep in mind is what gaps they think are important and sexy to fix. Now, there seems to be a big gender gap in the plumbing profession. There doesn't seem to be women advocating for gender parity in plumbing and organizations devoted to having women choose a plumbing career. We reserve that for air-conditioned office STEM jobs. Women don't want them, but what a woman wants is secondary to what the globalists want. And what is the point of these lies? You might believe that men and women are equal, but most women will have children, and most women will want to stay at home full-time with their children or work part-time. Now, if we are building an equal world, why wouldn't we build a world where all people's desires to stay home with their children were accommodated? Globalists would never build such a world because it is their stated goal to get as many people working as possible, so we can reach maximum production. We don't build a world where children come first, we build a world where career comes first. A world with a man's goal of career and position as one we should all follow. Men and women, because women working in cubicles is fair and noble, and the same woman working for their husbands and family is exploitation. This is the greatest deception of the globalists, and the one that I believe has led to more misery for the female population is the myth that stay-at-home mother is unfulfilled and exploited. You can clearly see, and I can clearly remember from my youth, that women with husbands and children are the happiest, smilingest people on earth. Cubicle women are the most miserable people on earth, and they have chosen a man's path, and it is clear that what's make women happy are relationships and family. To be clear, this is part of the auto-genocide of Western cultures that we are going through. I intend to combat this by giving married couples, where one stays home with the children full-time, a $20,000 per year income sharing tax break. There are thousands of jobs in government sectors and private sectors that work with government. Every year, tens of thousands of jobs come open in these sectors. Appropriate job will be reserved for our mothers whose children are old enough in high school to take care of themselves and who want to return to the workforce. These government and private jobs will be reserved for those who have raised the next generation of our society, and our mothers will be assured of a safe, secure economic future. This is true justice. Now let's address racial inequities. I have a graph in front of me showing worker productivity and workers' compensation from 1950 to present. From 1950 to 1972, compensation went in lockstep with productivity. Labor and capital were sharing equally in productivity gains. Then, like a switch was thrown, the workers' wages line stays flat as labor productivity grows every year. Productivity has doubled since 1972, yet wages are flat. We hear about this all the time, that all the wage increases are going to the top 0.01%. But nobody has a plan to address it. Let me be clear at what I'm saying. The average Toronto wage is $76,219 a year. Let's say whites make on average $78,000 and blacks $70,000. All the progressive globalist media, the progressive government, the progressive corporations will agree these gaps need to be addressed so we can be full communists or something. But this is an illusion, a magic trick of misdirection. As the productivity compensation chart shows, we should all be making double of what we make now. The globalist has got us chasing each other over an $8,000 a year gap, while the globalists steal $78,000 a year from the white man and $70,000 a year from the black man. They spit on us and shine us up to the tune of half our income, while they set us on each other to fight over the scraps they leave. No more. True justice is in town, and it's time the working man got his share. So please join me. Now it's time to take on the third heresy of the matrix of exploitation that imprisons us. The lie of anthropogenic climate change. The lie that carbon dioxide mankind is putting into the atmosphere is going to imminently bring about catastrophe on Earth. There is a YouTube channel, 1000 Frolly, 1000FROLLY. You should study to reach the right conclusion. I encourage you to. But basically, CO2 only accounts for 3% of the greenhouse effect. Water vapor accounts for 90%. There's not been any change in global climate according to the satellite and balloon data. Global warming is a fiction. As far as CO2's other effects, plants on Earth have evolved to grow optimally at a CO2 level of 2,000 parts per million. The present value is 432 parts per million. So if you somehow think CO2 is harmful, you have to believe that plant food that plants depend on, plants that animals depend on, will harm the Earth. Making plants grow faster will hurt the Earth. It's beyond parody that people have been deluded into believing this lie. The only effect the tripling of the CO2 in the atmosphere will have is to increase crop yields and make the deserts bloom. When Obama was elected, he promised to slow the rise of the oceans, and that pretty much sums up climate change. It's a multi-trillion-dollar pointless virtue signal. It is a project of the administrative state, by the administrative state, and for the administrative state. Taxing CO2 is the ultimate dream. You're taxing air. The multiple trillions wasted on climate change could have done so much environmental good, but we pissed it away tilting at windmills. We live under the thrall of an environmental death cult. True justice would immediately break all contracts with wind and solar suppliers when we declare bankruptcy in Ontario. We will end the grip of this cult in our province. The next two levels of the matrix are very Orwellian. To believe these lies takes doublethink. The ability to believe two contradictory facts at the same time. Examples of Orwellian doublethink are: war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. The next two big lies of doublethink are just as foul. They are: diversity is strength, and Islam is a religion of peace. Let's look at the diversity is strength lie. Now, a child can see the logic behind the phrase unity is strength, but years of globalist indoctrination feed you the lie that diversity is strength. There's actual science on this. Robert Putnam, a Harvard political scientist, measured the effects of diversity. Here's what the Boston Globe reported on his research. He found that the greater the diversity in the community, the fewer people vote, the less they volunteer, the less they give to charity, the less they work on community projects. In the most diverse communities, neighbors trust each other about half as much as they do in the most homogeneous settings. Virtually all measures of civic health are lower in diverse settings. Even though the science is clear, the globalists use diversity as strength to justify everything they do. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is basically a globalist Borg, but instead of repeating assimilation is certain over and over, he repeats the lie that diversity is strength over and over. Under true justice, economic growth and prosperity are the goal, not the diversianity cult. Now we come to the newest and biggest of the lies. No sane person would look you straight in the eye and say freedom is slavery, and expect you to believe it. But tens of millions of brainwashed globalist drones will stare you straight in the eye and say the blood-soaked lie that Islam is a religion of peace. If you're going to follow me, you have to live in an objective reality. In an objective reality, Islam is responsible for 95% of the terror in the world today and 270 million historical deaths. Calling Islam a religion of peace is like calling the Nazis an animal welfare movement. Another quote from Orwell: "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." Today, the entire matrix of oppression, the government, media, corporations, and academia, are enforcing the lie that Islam is a religion of peace. They're trying to get you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears, to squelch opposition, to destroy critical thinking. This destruction of critical thinking is important. Because if the populace thinks critically, we will reject a lot of what is being done to us. If every time you see an Islamic terror act, your first thought is that the people doing this aren't really Islamic, you live in a matrix of confusion, and I'm bringing the intellectual dynamite to free you. Here's a scary guy named Goebbels saying something relevant to our situation. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such a time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic, and/or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus, by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. This is relevant because cracks are showing. The lies are lethal now, and the truth is the enemy of the state. There is a quote from an unknown source that is appropriate here. In times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. We live in such times of universal deceit. I have a project we can do together to combat this universal deceit, the matrix of lies we live in. I'm hoping to get people to email me a cell phone video of them saying something blasphemous, something heretical. The email address is whileican.iwill.gmail.com. whileican.iwill.gmail.com. My entry will be, my name is Paul Marker, and while I can, I will say Islam is not a religion of peace. There is also a Patreon you can contribute to. All proceeds will go to setting up a website where we can play the videos of us saying our heresies and a forum to discuss freedom. Please at least spend the time to video yourself saying something blasphemous and send it to me. This heresy is not limited to Islam or race or sex realism. It is anything you believe it is heresy to say. From saying all rape accusers shouldn't be believed to saying Beyonce is not the bomb anymore. Anything controversial. If it hurts to hear, let's say it. So please join me in this effort to speak freely while we can. Chatelet, brothers and sisters.